Hi everyone, Sarah here from Sarah Homfray Embroidery, and this week I have really been inspired by your pieces from our Stitching Around the World for World Embroidery Day. That's what this is for in the background, and all the wonderful different things that you were making in that video. So I thought this week we will take a piece of unfinished embroidery and we'll have a look at some ideas on how you can turn it into a finished thing and complete your embroideries. So I'm going to use a piece that I made recently just to demonstrate some different ideas in this video. So I'm going to use my little 5 lavender flower videos. This one went up a couple of weeks ago, and you can have a go at stitching these as a free PDF design on the website. If you want to have a go at this, there's a link in the description below to get your hands on that. So I thought it's still on a frame, so I thought let's get it off the frame and make it into something. But thought, what can we actually make it into? Okay, so you could mount it in a frame to go on the wall. So if you want to know how to do this method, we have a masterclass in that. We have a video on that. You can check that out on our channel. Shows you the whole process for how to do that from start to finish. You can also use that technique and not put it in a frame. So this is made in exactly the same way. It's got little jingly janglers on the bottom, so I'll try not to make too much noise with that. So this has been mounted in exactly the same way as that one in the frame has, but I've made it into just a little hanging without the frame. So you can do that method as well. And I just want to point out that this can be done with many different types of embroidery. So this one has been done on canvas as well. So if you're a needle pointer or you like canvas work, you can still frame that in the same way that I have done my other embroideries as well. So you can do it either in a frame or you can make a free hanging out of it. So while we're talking about hangings, ginger cat sitting on it, we've got a little soft hanging as well. So you will have seen this one in a previous video as well. This is my little slow stitch flowers, how to use up some of your stash and make some beautiful flowers. But this is a soft hanging, so this hasn't been wrapped around a board to go in a frame. It's nice soft hanging. So I could take my lavenders out of the frame and I could just put a soft backing on it, make a nice board around it and hang it from a nice little dowel like that, and just have a soft hanging. You can always mount things in the frame you actually stitched it in as well. So these are little embroidery hoops, just a normal embroidery hoop you would sew in. And this is again another project that we've done in a previous video. And I just left it in the hoop like that. Put a little bit of ribbon on the top to make it look nice, little hanging ribbon. And you can hang it up in that. And there are purpose made ones of these for display. And I've got a little one up here. This is my little silk shaded tulip that we did to demonstrate some silk shading, and these are flexi frames, so these are made for display. These are not made to actually do the stitching in, but they're made to display your embroideries. So if you want a kind of quick method, this one is quite a long method in the box to a traditional mounting method. If you want a quick method, hoops are brilliant for that. So you can either use the one you've worked in or you can get the display frame. Obviously mine isn't really that shape. I haven't got a hoop that's going to fit that, so I'm going to do something a little bit different with mine. So depending on the shape of your embroidery, you could make them into little bags. So this was a little sampler I made. That was a little mandala that I did, and it's actually on a big enough piece of fabric that I could use a whole piece of fabric and fold it in half to make a bag. So obviously some of these won't be relevant maybe to your pieces, but I'm just trying to give you lots of different ideas as to what you can actually do with yours. If your fabric isn't big enough to do that with and make a whole bag, you can just make the front of a bag. So little silk shaded fuchsia that I did, and that's just on the front of the bag, and then I've actually got a separate piece of fabric for the back, and I put the two pieces of fabric together and made a bag. So if it's not big enough to do that format, you can always just do 2 pieces and put 2 pieces together and make a bag. And you can also make a panel in a bag. So if you wanted to make a bit of a bigger bag, then you can put the embroidery in the middle and then you can construct a bag pattern around it, or you can sew that onto a bag that you've already got, maybe if you don't want to make your own bag as well. So there's lots of different ideas about how you can put it into a bag if you want to do that. So if I look at the format of the actual piece that I'm going to use, that will help to suggest some ideas of what I can do with it. So it's in this landscape format, and this is the shape of a YouTube video. This is the format that YouTube videos are watched in. That's this format. So I have lots of pieces embroidery that are in this format, so they're long and thin. So this wouldn't work for one of these little bags. I can't turn this format into this shape. It's just not the right shape. So what else does it suggest to me? So it could be a pencil case. It's long and it's thin and it's in landscape. So that could be the front part of the pencil case. This is the point Ginger Cat gets bored. No, See, Jonathan. Go on. So I could put another panel on the back of that in a different fabric. I could use a nice matching fabric, a nice purple one on the back, and it could put a zip in the top, and it could be a pencil case. We had Kathy in Ohio on our Stitching Around the World video who was making little cushions, little pillows for cancer patients in recovery who were having treatment, and they just put it over their eyes, and that just keeps all the bright lights out, which was a really beautiful idea to make. And they were about this size, so we could make a lovely little lavender pillow that you can put over your eyes. You can block out the dark if you want. You could fill it with lavender, and it'd be nice and scented as well. It might help you to get to sleep. So it could be a little cushion, a little pillow as well. Make a really nice box panel. There were loads of boxes going on in the video as well, really fabulous boxes. I could have it as the panel in the lid of a box. I could make it nice and big like that. It could go on the front. I could put more lavender embroidery around the sides. So there's quite a lot of things I could do with this shape. So you need to look at the embroidery you have and think, what does it immediately say to me? What can I do with it and what can't I do with it, and narrow it down that way. So what I think I'm actually going to do with mine is I am going to make a book cover. So book covers are great for finished embroideries because, again, like the bags, you can do them in lots of different formats, and I'll show you a couple of them a little bit later. And I thought what I would do with this is make a book cover with it. Now obviously I've got 5 different flowers here and I can't split that in half, so I can't wrap it around the book cover. So I thought what I would do is make a spine out of it. So I thought if I put this central one down the spine, and then this becomes the front and this becomes the back, and I thought that would work quite nicely, and I can make a little book, and then I've got my lavender embroideries all the way around the book cover. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to show you how I do that and the different stages involved. So I've actually made myself a book insert. I've made some pages. These are super easy to do. If you want to know how to make your own, I'll just run through this a little bit later in the video. I just wanted to show you how to make the actual cover at this stage. So I'll show you how to do that. You can buy a pre-made one from the shop. You can always cut these down. These ones are just stapled down the middle, so you can get a knife and a ruler, and you can cut that down to shape if you don't have one that fits your embroidery. So we'll come back to that and I'll show you that process later, but I'm going to get this off the frame now, and I'm going to show you how you can make a simple book cover. So I've taken it off the frame. It's just got a couple of pin marks in it where it's been on the frame, but probably going to get cut off, so I'm not too worried about those. But you can just iron it if you want to. Just make sure it's all prepared, ready for the next stage. And what's going to happen is if I turn that over, you can see the back, my embroidery. Quite pleased with that. So the principle is my cover's going to fit inside like that. I'm going to cut this down. It'll be rolled in top and bottom, and then the ends will fold over, and they will just go inside the cover, and the cover will slip inside there. So that's the principle of it. So I just need to cut my bit of fabric down. So what I did for this, I'll just go over this, just to get the shape that I wanted for my book. I just made sure I wanted to have it inside this green area that I've painted. So I got a piece of card and I put it behind my embroidery. I can show you a picture of that now, and just held it up to the light, and then I could see what size I wanted my card, and I can just move it around and make sure that that was the right size, and I can get all of my embroidery inside that. I wrote those measurements down. Don't need to be beautiful. Just make a note of them. So I knew it was going to be 18 centimetres long, 9.5 centimetres high, and I made 3 centimetres for the middle to make sure that I got that lavender in the middle. This has got beads on it, so this is not going to fold very easily around a corner. So I just made sure that I got that dimension right, which leaves me 7.5 centimetres on each side. So I've had to measure it specific to my embroidery. So if you have one that you want to use for a book cover, just make sure you spend the time just doing a few measurements first and get that right, because once you cut the fabric, not very easy to add it back on. So it is worth just doing that preparation first. So the other thing I am going to do is put a little lining in it. So I'm going to put a little purple bit of fabric. I've got a nice lavendery colour linen that I'm going to put inside, and just a little bit of padding is nice. Sometimes on the back the embroidery can be a little bit raised there, and that will just help to let that sit nice and flat against the book. So I've got a piece of felt inside like that. That's just a little bit bigger than my cover, and I've actually cut my lining the same size. Now, there's a couple of ways you can put the lining in. So we could fold this over, and then you could fold the lining over and you could stitch it along there, so you've got a nice neat join there. I'm just going to put it on top, and then I'm going to fold this one over, and then I'm going to sew that over the top of there. So there's a couple of ways that you can put a lining in, but I just think that's quite nice. When this is folded over, you won't really see it because the book's inside, but if you ever take the book out, it's just finished it off nicely. So just a little extra touch just to add that lining in there. So that is the size of my book cover, so I need to make sure that this is the right size now. So I'm going to cut this down. I'm going to leave the ends in because they have to fold inwards. Doesn't work if I don't do that, but this is a bit too big, so I just really want a seam allowance. I'm going to fold it over and fold it over again, so I only want that much. So I'm just going to cut this down now and make that the right size. So I've actually just pinned my backing fabric to it so I know where to cut, and I don't cut too much off one side. Just hold it up to the light, you can see that underneath, so I've got the right distance at the top and the bottom, and that's nicely in the middle, and then I can just cut the sides down. I'm not going to cut the ends, just the sides. I'm just going to check that is where I want it to be. That looks perfect, so just that little edge coming over like so. These will be the other way around, the purple will be on the back, but just to check my measurements, I'm going to do the same the other side, then I can pin that in place, and then I can do some stitching. So I've just pinned it all the way to the ends because I'm going to sew all the way along here. This bit's going to get folded in over this, so don't worry about this raw edge. So I'm going to sew this to my backing fabric, and so I'm going to start at the end. Now there's a couple of ways that you can sew this down. So we can do an invisible stitch, so we're going to do a little ladder stitch along there and you won't see the stitches at all. You could do it on the sewing machine if you want to. You can run along there with the sewing machine. Your stitches will show the other side, so if you used a contrasting colour you'd get some nice stitches showing along here. Make sure the line is straight. I'm a hand stitcher, so I'm going to hand stitch mine. You could do a running stitch along it. Again, the stitches will show on the other side, so make sure that they're nice and neat. But I'm going to do the invisible one, I think. So I've got 2 strands of a stranded cotton here in a purple. If it's going to be invisible, it doesn't really matter. I don't know why I've made it purple, but just so you can see what I'm doing on the camera, that's why I made it purple. So I'm going to start at the end. Right, so what we're going to do, we've just done a little stitch back to the start there, so I'm going to take a little bit of that fold there, and then a little bit of the background fabric, and then a little bit of the fold coming straight opposite where I came out, and then straight across into there, and a little bit of that fabric too. Just check that you're not taking it from the front. Pull it tight. So you'll see this called a slip stitch or a ladder stitch, you might see it called. So a little bit of that one. Just taking that seam there, just on the edge of the seam. And then a little bit of the bottom one. Just keep checking that you haven't gone through to the front with your stitches for this one, because this one's an invisible one. And they're going to work all the way down. When I get to this backing fabric, you can take the pins out as well when you get to there. I'm going to just carry on. So a bit of that fabric, if you want to pick up a bit of the felt underneath as well, you can. So just stitching the 2 pieces of fabric together with the felt squashed inside. So if you want to pick up a bit of that felt, you can. Just check it's not gone through on the front. So I'm just going to go all the way down there like that, make that nice invisible seam, go up the other side, and then I'll show you how to deal with the ends. So I'm just coming to the end now. I've come off my backing fabric and my felt, and I'm back onto this. Now this is actually the backing fabric of my embroidery. I've got to mention this. You need a backing fabric on your embroidery if you want to sew this to the backing fabric here, and you want to do it invisibly. If you don't have a backing fabric on your embroidery, you'll still need to turn this hem over, turn this edge over. You'll need to do a visible stitch. So a running stitch or a machine embroidery stitch or any other decorative stitch you like, but what's going to show on the front. So just something to be aware of. If you don't have a backing fabric on your embroidery, you'll need to do a decorative visible stitch for the end. So I'm just going to keep going to the end, and if you can see it, it wasn't very visible, just pull it a little bit tighter and those stitches will disappear. just making sure that's folded in right up to the end. And then to finish it off, just go back and forth a few times like we did to start it. Won't see this bit, so just going to go back into those layers there just to finish off that stitch like so. Then I can cut that off. So I've just got that nice neat edge folded over my lining fabric, goes from one end to the other. So I'm going to do the same this side, and then we'll fold these ends in. So now's a good time to check it fits around my book. So I know my book goes to the end of my lining. Now I haven't gone all the way to the edge with my lining because it just tends to get a bit thick. We're going to turn that over and it just starts to bulk out a bit, but you can go all the way to the end if you want to. Now the idea is, so there's my cover. This will go over here. And then I'm just going to sew it along the top and the bottom. So just make your cover a tiny bit bigger than your book. Let's pin that in place. And then if I go to the other side and go over there, I'm going to cut these so they're even. There's a bit more fabric this side than the other side. And don't pull it too tightly because I'm going to have to bend around the spine. And then hopefully, if I've done it properly, my lavender's in the middle. So let's have a look. Oh, it's upside down. Doesn't matter which way the book is. There we go. So lavender is in the middle. It could go a tiny bit further this way, so I'm just going to shuffle it a little bit and just make that line up a little bit closer to there. So let's have a little fiddle with that. So there we go, a little bit of a fiddle just to make sure it all fits. That's down the spine nicely. It's just a little bit bigger here, you can see, just so allow me to, those two to meet me to be able to slip the book in and out of the cover. So I'm just going to tidy these ends up. So now I know that's in the right place, I can take the book out, like so, and then I can just fold this under. So if I just pin it here, I know that's where the fold is, right at the edge there like that. And that's where the fold is, and I can take those out, and then I can just tidy this up, fold that under, and then I can sew up the side there. So I've got a nice neat edge down here. Those are just folded under, and then I'm going to sew up here and up here so I can get my book in. So just before I do that, I'm going to fold this side as well. I'm just going to give it a little press, and then I'll show you how to stitch these parts. So we're going to sew just along the top now, and I want this to be invisible as well. And I want to sew right on the edge because we know the book fits in that. So I'm going to use 2 strands of my purple stranded cotton. I'm just going to take that under there with a knot. So the knot's hidden inside. And then again, just do that same stitch that we did down the side. So just this ladder stitch. So a little bit of that fabric, a little bit of that one, just right on the edge of that seam now. Nice small stitches so you get a really nice tight finish. You can pull it tight. A little bit of that one. Go opposite, go back in opposite where you came out. A little bit of that. All the way up to that corner. You can pull them tight at the end. Go right into the corner, and then if you just pull that tight, you can see those stitches disappear. And if you want to, you can actually go back and go in between those previous ones. If you want it to be a little bit more secure, you can just go between those stitches. I tend to do that, go back the other way, then I know that's not going to come undone, and I can finish my thread off at the end. To finish it off, I'm just going to slide it inside. Do a couple of stitches over each other, put it through the loop, pull it tight, cut that off. Let's make that nice little finish there. So I need to do the same for my other 3 corners, and then we can check our book, make sure it fits. So here's my little book in its little lavender book cover. So I think it just needs something to hold it shut. So I'm going to put a little bit of silk ribbon on it and tie it in a little bow. So I'm just going to mark, I'm just going to eyeball it, but you can measure it. Mark the centre. There, the centre there. I think that's good. And then I've just threaded some 7mm ribbon in a needle, and I'm going to tie a fairly big knot in the end, like so. And then I'm going to come out of the cover. I'm just going to come out where that pin is. Take the pin out, give it a wiggle through. Do the same the other side. And I can tie that in a little bow, pull the book closed. Cut these to whatever length I want, make them a little bit shorter, I think. There's my finished book cover. So I'm just going to show you how I made this book, and then I'll show you a few more ways that you can adapt your book cover if your embroidery doesn't quite fit this format. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I made this book to fit the project. So if you're working backwards and you've got a finished embroidery and you want to make it into something like a book, then you're going to have to find a book that fits your embroidery. So if you can't find one that you can buy, or you can cut up and make it fit, you can make your own one. So this is quite simple to make. So I'm just going to show you how I did that on here. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I measured the size of my card so that it would get the embroidery on it, and I had enough fabric to fold over, and I took all those measurements, and I spent a little bit of time doing that, and I noted those down so it got the right ones. Worth doing that at the beginning just to make sure. I folded the spine into it, so you can just double check as you go that that's going to fit on that spine, and it does fit nicely in there. So I just double checked everything, and then I've just made these separate leaves up. So if I just move those out to the side, so I've just got some I've got some card which is the same size as that part there, so not including the spine, and I've just doubled it in half. So this is the same as this but without the spine down the middle. Folded it in half, made another one, goes inside, folds that in half, and made a third one and folded that in half. So I've made kind of 3 leaves, and then fold that in half, and then that's going to be sewn in there. So my actual book, I've made lots of these. So there's the first 3, there's the second 3, and I did 3 of those and 4 of those. So I've got 4, show you so you can see. So I've got 4 different folios in there which I've stitched into the spine, and if I show you that there, you can see how I've stitched it. So super simple stitch. I'll just show you that quickly, and then that's my cover around there, and that's my cover that fits into my book cover. So the cover of my paper book fitting into my fabric cover. So they're super easy to make. I'll just show you quickly how to do that stitch. So I've just marked on the inside of my spine there where those 4 separate sets of pages are going to go. So you'll just need to do a little bit of measuring there, make sure they're in the right place. And then I've just found the centre on here. So the centre, I've marked it with a pencil, and I've gone 2 centimetres up, 2 centimetres down. You can do an inch and a bit. So I've just got some buttonhole thread. So you need a really strong thread for this because we're going to pull it really tight. And then you can put all 3 pages together. Make sure they are all lined up. And we're going to make a hole in the middle. I've got a little mat here. You can use a towel. You can just use an ordinary sewing needle for this. So make your 3 holes. We're just going to sew through those. And they will go through all 3. So you need to keep those together. Go down the centre one. Leave a little tail end there. And then what we're going to do is actually sew it to the back of this one. So if you fold it in half on the first line, if you want to, you can make a little pencil mark where those holes are. Then you can just make your holes in here as well with your needle. Okay, so line all of the holes up. The easiest way is just to put your needle in the centre one. Line it up with the centre one in the cover. We're going to go down through the centre. Just keep your thumb on that tail end. We're going to come up through that one there. We go back down through the centre. We come up in the left hand one like so, and then I just take my needle under there, and then you can just knot that together. Pull it really tight, knot it again for good luck, and we'll go for a third one just in case. And then you can just cut those So there's my first set of pages in. So you're just going to repeat that for number 2, 3 and 4. If you've got that many, you might find you don't need that many. You might find just one is okay if you just want to use one. So however many you need, you can sew those ones in as well, exactly the same way. And then you end up with your lots of different pages. You get that nice thick book. So if you want to make one, that's an easy way to make one with a little spine on it, and that will fit your embroidery exactly. So that's an easy way to make yourself a little book if you want it to fit your embroidery. I just wanted to show you how I'd done that, because somebody will ask me, how did you make your little book? So that's, I made a little book, so that can go the cover. And then I just want to show you, if you don't have an embroidery that will go all the way around the book, you've got a nice embroidery, you think, well, it's not wide enough, it won't go around there. Just want to show you a couple more here that you can do. So if your embroidery is not big enough to go all the way round, you can just make your front cover with it. So here I've just covered a piece of card in the same way that I showed you for the frame at the beginning, if you want to mount it in a frame. So I've just covered that piece in the card there, and then I've made a little book with a different backing on it. So just the front cover for that one. This one I've done a similar thing in that I have made the cover out of a piece of fabric, but then I've just attached the embroidery to this side of it because it's not big enough to go over the whole thing. So I've just sewn it to that bit of fabric there, and again that's made a front cover. And then this one is interesting because it's just got a tiny bit of embroidery on it. So even if you've just got a little bit of embroidery you want to use and you think, well, that's not big enough to make a book cover, why not sew it down to another piece of embroidery, or in this case a bit of slow stitching or a cover, and you can still put it on your book. So just a few different ideas about how you can make book covers even if your embroidery is not book cover shape. There's my little lavender book finished. Turned out quite nicely, I think. It's quite cute. If you like these books and you're interested in knowing how to do more embroidered books, we've got quite a few videos on embroidered books and embroidered book covers, both of those. We'll make a playlist. We're going to stick them all in one playlist. You can check that out up here. Go and have a look at that, be inspired and see what else you can create with book covers. If you've enjoyed this video, do give it a thumbs up. I'll see you next time.